So when we're talking about different types of data, right? Different types of data are important because not all variables have the same type of data. And we have to be careful because different types of data restrict what we can do with certain kinds of variables. For example, if you had a variable that was a person's name, a string, then you can do certain things with it. Let's check that out for just a second and see what I mean. So I've got this little script here. You can ignore kind of the rest of the page. But let's say I've got a let fname equal Bill and let lname equal Moseley. Now, I can, if I want to, let whole name equal fname plus lname. And if I want to, I can put that on the console.log. Whole name. Okay, so if I want to print that, I better go back and include my semicolons at the end of these lines. If I want to check that out, I can go here and you can see it prints Bill Moseley to the console over here. Now, I can do addition with first name and last name, even though they're strings, because all that means to JavaScript is that we're going to concatenate those strings. In other words, we're going to put them together. But if I want to instead, let's make that a little bit bigger so we can see that. If I want to instead, let's say I want to do division with those variables. Can I divide fname by lname and have that printed to the console? Let's see what it does. Okay, look at this. It says NaN. What does that mean? It means not a number. So I can't do this because those aren't numbers. Now, if I had some other variables, let N1 equal 500 and let N2 equal 20, I could take N1 and I could divide that by N2, right? I could do 500 divided by 20. And when I look at that, it shows me the answer is 25. So data types are important because data types restrict what we can do with different kinds of variables. Now, there are a lot of data types, but we're going to stick with just a few today. And for the first part of the class, we're really going to focus on these. So the first type, obviously, is a number. So I would declare that like this, let age equals 30. And that would put the number or the integer 30 into that variable. Now, an integer is just a number that does not have a decimal point. A number with a decimal point is sometimes called a float or floating point or decimal. This is an integer, but right now we're just concerned that it is a number. Okay, another type of data for JavaScript is called a string. A string is also sometimes called a string literal. And the reason for that is because it is literally a string of, or a list of characters. JavaScript doesn't make any sense of what's in there. It just sees a capital B, an I, an L, an L. Those are just characters. It could be a space, it could be punctuation, it could be almost anything inside that, and even characters that don't print to the screen. So a string or a string literal is just a list of characters that are arranged in a certain order. So let name equals Bill in quotes, and I can declare a string literal with double quotes or single quotes. Both work. There are times when you will need to use one or the other, though, and I will get into those as we need to. The next type is a Boolean. A Boolean only has two possible values, and they are both all lowercase. Notice there are no quotes because it's not a string. Boolean is always either true or false. That's it. And it's lowercase. If you put these as uppercase letters or uppercase words, uppercase true or uppercase false, you're going to get an error, or you're going to get some kind of a weird, unexpected result. So we always want to make sure that if we're declaring a Boolean, it's always lowercase true or lowercase false. And we'll get into how to use these as we move into the class. But just know they exist right now. It's fine. You don't have to be an expert on any of these variable types. This is just the beginning. As we learn how to use them, we'll get more advanced. So if I want to, I can let a variable be an undefined data type. All that means is that it's a variable, it's a container that's empty, and we haven't told it what type of container it is. So let variable, notice there is no equal sign here. We're not assigning a value to it. We're not making it any specific type of data either. This is not always a great idea, because a variable that's an undefined type sometimes gives you some weird results. And we can't really do anything with it either, because there's no value, there's no type, there's not really anything in it. This is just sort of making a variable and waiting to use it later. Null is a way of having a variable, and it also does not really have a type, because what we're saying here is this variable is empty, okay? Since in JavaScript, we may want to keep a variable that exists so we don't have an error later on in our code, but we want it to be empty because we don't want it to have something in it like 30 or bill or true. Putting null, or setting a variable to null, allows us to have a container that exists, but it says specifically this container is empty. That's what null means. So those are the basic data types, and those are the ones we're going to start with. We will add to those as we go into the class a little deeper, but for starters, that is data types for JavaScript.